of elephants that show up with delivery models. And I want to know what you think about the one that I'm going to pick out as being something that I see, which is how 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 people in the middle, how people in the are always saying it's not my problem, as being something that I see, which is how people in the middle to pick out as being something that I see, which is how people in the middle are always saying, it's not my problem. It's not my problem. That
I love that one.
my problem. It's not my problem.
That I love that one.
Right? So as a delivery model goes, we all have a responsibility. Yet when it comes down to where the the rubber meets the road, the rubber. When it comes down to where the the rubber. Responsibility. Yet when it comes down to where the rubber meets the road, everybody backs off. Down to where the rubber meets the road, everybody backs off. That's not my problem. What are your thoughts about that? And is that the biggest one that you see?
As a consumer, yes. Absolutely.
Okay.
As someone who consumes digital and physical products, it is definitely as
you see.
As a consumer, yes. Absolutely.
Okay. As
consumer, yes. Absolutely.
Okay.
As someone who could. As someone who consumes digital and physical products, it is definitely and physical products is definitely I hate is definitely I hate getting is definitely I is definitely I hate is definitely I hate getting to the point is definitely I hate getting and physical products is definitely I hate getting to the point in a conversation when I think I'm talking to someone who can help me, like, oh wait, let me pass you on to a different department. I can't do that.
right.
Like, why department. I can't do that.
Right.
Like, why did I just talk to you for an hour then to find out that I didn't need a Wait, let me pass you on to a different department. I can't do that.
Right.
Like, why did I just talk to you for an hour then to find out that I didn't need a different department? That's great. To find out that I didn't need a different department? That's great. I love it. You guys are paying them hourly and I'm wasting my time too. Should do it again.
I'll call you tomorrow at 7.
Time too. Should do it again.
I'll call you tomorrow.
Too. Should do it again.
I'll call you tomorrow at 7.
Yep. Are you gonna be? Are you? When's your shifts? Let's just. Should do it again.
I'll call you tomorrow at 7.
Yep. Are you gonna be? Are you? When's your shift?
Tomorrow at 7.
Yep. When's your shifts? Let's just make this a weekly check-in. We'll just do that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a big. And we'll just do that.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a big part.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a big part.
Yeah.
It's a big part. And I think we had talked about like the. And I think we had talked about. We had talked about. Let's do that.
Exactly. Yeah.
That.
Exactly. Yeah.
We had talked about like the brand coherence part is that if that's a culture, if you have one section doing it, nobody lives in a vacuum. Section doing it, nobody lives in a vacuum. So then you have one section doing it, nobody lives in a vacuum. So eventually your whole company is going to do it. And at the end, you know, it's going to come down, company's going to do it. And at the end, you know, it's and at the end, you know, it's going to, and at the end, do it. And at the end, it's going to come down to do it. And at the end, it's going to come down to, you know, use the owner. The end, it's going to come down to use the owner or wherever the buck actually ends up stopping, and it's going to be a real big pile to deal with by yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody likes that.
Nobody likes that. I know. And you were talking about it. You were talking about it
to deal with by yourself.
You were talking about
pile to deal with by yourself.
You were talking about it from the consumer side, which I
Self.
You were talking about it from
A real big pile to deal with by yourself.
You were talking
to deal with by yourself.
You were talking about it from the consumer side, which I experience sometimes too. About it from the consumer side, which I experience sometimes too, and I usually call those companies out as I'm in the middle and I'm heated. Usually call those companies out as I'm in the middle and I'm heated. Usually call those companies out as I'm in the middle. And I usually call those companies out as I'm in the middle and I'm heated and some other things. So and some other things. So I won't rake people who have already raked over the coals on the show. Again, because over the coals on the show. On the show. Again, because nothing has happened recently. That said, nothing has happened recently. That said, when that said, when you were talking about the inside, this concept of brand coherence, how of brand coherence, how, and especially in terms of and talking about the inside, this concept of brand coherence, how and especially in terms of delivery. And especially in terms about the inside, this concept of brand coherence, especially in terms of delivery, concept of brand coherence, especially in concept of brand coherence, especially about the inside, this concept of brand coherence, this concept of brand coherence, especially in terms of when you were talking about the inside, this concept of brand coherence, especially in terms of delivery and support, because it's not especially in terms of delivery and support, because it's not just delivery and support, because it's not support, because it's and support, because it's not just support, because it's not just in terms of delivery and support, because it's not just it's not just delivery models are not just getting the product to the consumer anymore. It's the before, the during, before, the before, the during, and the after. And
Yeah.
so, before, the during, and the after. So, during, and the after. On the other side, where we're talking about coherence, before, the during, and the after. On the other side, where we're talking about coherence, how do we find the people who are it's not my how do we find that it's not my how do we find that my how do we find the people who we're talking about coherence? The other side, where we're talking about coherence, how do we find that it's not my problem people?
Oh, I mean, that starts all
People.
starts all the way back at all the way back at what is the culture? What is a hiring process?
Okay.
So there's, you can also you process.
Okay.
You can also set up all of your employees for failure if in the expectations portion of hiring people you don't portion of hiring people you don't set that expectation of hey, this isn't that expectation of this isn't pass the buck company. This isn't pass the buck company. This is a you are do you need to help company. This is a you are do you need to help deal with issues that come to your plate. And so it's building in a it's building that come to your plate. And so it's building issues that come to your plate. And so to help deal with issues that come to your plate. It's building in a culture of fix the problem. Don't just look at your title and say, oh, I'm IT. I don't touch anything else. I don't do anything else. I'm just IT. And so building anything else, I'm just IT. And so building that culture of, and so that's that really it's else, I'm just IT. And so that's that really it's, and so that's anything else. I don't do anything else. I'm just IT. That's that really it starts at when you start the company. Or if you're one of those companies that hasn't done that yet, it's starting now or as soon as you can and picking that culture because you can guide culture because you can and picking that culture you can guide you can, as soon as you can and picking that culture you can guide or as soon as you can and picking that culture you can guide you can set up your employees to guide you can can, and picking that culture. You can set up your employees to become pass the buck people, or you can create pass the buck people, or you can create this culture of we just saw the customer needs to be helped, do everything to be helped, do everything that you can, and giving your employees the permission, because there's also the permission, because there's also well, I don't want to do it because it's not my job title and I'll get in trouble if I touch it, so I need to pass it off. So it's also empowering your employees to pass it off. So it's also empowering your employees and your customer service through the whole process of, hey, you actually get the process of, hey, you actually through the whole process of, hey, you actually get to do things to help the customer. Yes, we have some guidelines, like don't break these rules. Some guidelines, like don't break these rules. But that can be, if you build that into part of your, that can be, if you build, but if you build that guidelines, like don't break these rules. But if you build that into part of your process, then that's part of your culture as a company, part of your brand, and then you end up not having those situations as much because your employees are always looking for how they can help the customer instead of just sticking to a little tiny box they think is around them. Little tiny box they think is around them.
It's interesting. Yeah, and it's interesting because I know companies are interested in liability, right?
They think is around them.
Companies are
think is around them.
Companies are interested in liability, right? HR exists to protect the company more than to protect the employees, and the
Correct.
HR is an agency of the companies, and the
Correct.
HR is a company more than to protect the employees. And And the HR is an agency to protect the company more than to protect the employees.
Correct.
The HR is an agency of the company.
Correct.
The HR is an agency of the company. And I'm using that as an employees.
Correct.
The HR is an agency of the company. I'm using that as an example because it's a much needed thing. And sometimes, so we're going to jump to the elephant in the room. And sometimes using that as an example because it's a much needed thing. Sometimes out of a scarcity mindset, companies are like, well, we got to close this down because it didn't go the way we wanted. And now we're at risk for this, or we're unsure about that, or we can't let that happen again. So all of these rigid rules. So instead of having, here are the lines you can't cross, having, here are the rules. So instead of having, here are the lines you can't cross, maybe there's 5 of them, there's, this is the way you're going to do this, because then we can ensure that you are a good representative of our company. And in that secondary scenario, there's no trust. You become
Correct.
trust. You become
Correct.
People become secondary scenario, there's no trust.
Correct.
You become in that secondary scenario, there's no trust.
Correct.
You become people become a cog in a people become people become a cog in a wheel. Secondary scenario, there's no trust.
Correct.
People become a cog in a wheel, and that there's no trust.
Correct.
You become people become secondary scenario, there's no trust.
Correct.
People become a cog. There's no trust.
Correct.
People become a cog in a wheel, and that's actually pretty limiting.
Yeah, it really limits what you're
wheel, and that's actually pretty limiting.
It really limits what your team can do, and if you think about like team can do, if you think about like how startups run, when you have a 5-person start, like how startups run, 5-person startup, there is no, oh, person number 1, you're going to sit in this box and you're going to do this. The startup would die. It wouldn't. Right. Startup would die. It wouldn't. Right.
That's right.
The point of having a small team is